Afternoon Adventures. We are back at it today with the D spells that have changed in the 2024 Player's Handbook. In this video, I'm going to be going over spells that have changed in any substantial way. Obviously, phrasing differences I'm not going to go over. Let's get right into it. Y'all know the drill by now. Dancing Lights. First up, it's now Illusion instead of Evocation, which makes a lot of sense. I don't know why it was ever not Illusion. It's just producing lights. And the material component is only phosphorus now, nothing else. So whatever that's worth to you. Most casters, again, use focuses or component pouches and don't have to worry about things like this, but it's different, so I mentioned it. Darkness no longer spreads around corners. That seems to be a running theme with these spherical spells. A lot of them don't spread around corners anymore, or at least don't say they do, unless something has changed with spheres that I don't know about. But in the glossary, it doesn't say anything about spheres going around corners. I think it's just kind of gone. The material component also no longer includes pitch, which is like tree sap if you're not familiar, for whatever that's worth. Dark Vision has gotten a buff. Now it applies Dark Vision with a range of 150 feet instead of 60 feet to the target of the spell. Huge. We also can't use an agate as the material component. It's only the other one. Daylight. It's sunlight, baby. Finally. The daylight spell is actual daylight. It can now be carried around on an object, like the light spell and the darkness spell, which is great. It's fantastic, actually, for walking around dispelling darknesses, slaying vampires. You can just hang on to it for the full hour now, and it still doesn't require concentration. So you just have a very bright sunlight. Phenomenal. I'm of the mind that someone in the party should have daylight prepared at all times. It's that good. Delayed Blast Fireball doesn't spread around corners, similar to Darkness, and it specifies now that when thrown, the bead detonates in the space of another creature, not when it hits a creature, quote unquote. So there's no longer ambiguity about needing to like make an attack or a saving throw with it. It's just when it goes into the space that another creature's in, it detonates, period. Easy peasy. Demiplane no longer traps creatures inside when the door disappears. Now they can choose to get shunted out of the doorway and land prone back in whatever plane they were in before. The door is now specifically medium-sized for whatever reason, so we're gonna have to take some extra steps getting our pocket Terrask out of our demiplane, but what can you do? Detect Evil and Good now specifically detects areas affected by the Hallow spell for whatever reason, not just Consecrated or Desecrated. Why that changed? I don't know. I'm still probably just gonna have it detect those things anyway. Like, if I decide that a churchyard is consecrated, the spell can detect it. I don't see why not. Mileage may vary. Also, all of these detect spells now are blocked by 1 foot instead of 3 feet of wood or dirt. That has changed across the board for all of these detection spells. Like Detect Magic. That's the only way that spell has changed. Detect Poison and Disease still has disease in the name, but doesn't refer to diseases outside of that. This is in line with all of the other changes to anything that used to apply a disease. WotC has stopped using that terminology. Things no longer apply diseases, things no longer cure diseases. If you're running old content that refers to disease, I'd still probably have the spell detect those things like they used to. The spell now uses the phrasing Magical Contagions, which I'm sure refers to the Contagion spell and maybe some other stuff. So take that as you will. Mileage may vary a little bit. And the spell's detection effects are also blocked by 1 foot of dirt or wood. Detect Thoughts works much the same as it used to, but the description has been rearranged to be easier to read, which I think is really good. And instead of creatures having to have an intelligence score of 3 or higher in order for us to detect them, now it's any creature that is capable of speaking a language or using telepathy, which I think is a better way of enumerating that. The spell is blocked by 1 foot of wood, dirt, or stone, or 1 inch of metal, instead of 2 feet or 2 inches like it used to be. I'm not sure why this one was different from the other spells in terms of how much material penetration it was capable of, but it was, and now it's more in line with everything else. If we're diving deep into a creature's thoughts and they want to end the connection, now they do so with an Arcana check instead of just a simple intelligence check, and instead of a contested check, it's now a check against our spell save DC. Dimension Door has gotten a buff in that we no longer are limited to creatures of our size or smaller when we're trying to take someone with us, which is very good for small PCs that want to take their medium allies along, and anyone on a mount, which is obviously going to be bigger than them. Dispel Evil and Good no longer uses both a melee spell attack and a saving throw for its dismissal effect. Now only uses a saving throw against a creature within 5 feet. So you don't have to double up, hit the creature, and have them fail a save. Having them do both of those things was a little much. Dissonant Whispers now affects deaf creatures. It no longer has the clause about not affecting a creature that can't hear it, and describes, with flavor text, the creature hearing the whispers in its mind, rather than whispers out loud that only it can hear. So, a little bit of a buff in that most creatures can hear anyway, probably, depending on your campaign, I guess, but it's a quality of life increase. Divination, much like Augury, now has a chance to fail to deliver a message when casting more than once per day, instead of a chance to return a false message back to you, which is, again, a little less funny and interesting, but definitely better for the caster. Divine Favor is now transmutation instead of evocation, which is a minor difference, but it makes sense. And more importantly, it no longer requires concentration, which is huge for paladins. I've always thought Divine Favor was a bit underrated. I like the spell a lot, so the fact that I can deal an extra d4 of radiant damage with all my weapon attacks, while also casting things like Blinding Smite that require concentration, that's just icing on an already delicious cake. Now, altogether, Dominate, Beast, Monster, and Person have all changed in that they no longer allow the caster to use an action to assume direct control.
I am assuming direct control.
Now we just give orders like we would any summoned creature, or animated undead, things like that. And last, Dream. They removed the language from Dream about elves not being affected and certain other creatures because they don't sleep. Now the spell works on them. I guess when they're doing their trance, they can still get visions anyway, so it makes sense lore-wise. And if we use the Nightmare effect that forces a creature to make a wisdom save, they no longer have disadvantage on that save if we have their toenails or hair or a piece of their flesh or any of that gross stuff. Although, DMs, you can still apply that if you want. You can always apply advantage or disadvantage to a roll circumstantially. So, if you want that to still be a thing, it totally can be. But it's not written into the spell anymore. And that is all of the D spells that have changed in the Player's Handbook 2024. We got through it. We're done. That's all I wanted to say. Have a day. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for the likes and subscriptions. Comment down below what your favorite spells changes are, I guess. I don't know. I'm tired, man. Anyway, have a good one, and happy adventuring in 2025.